subscribe to the channel. It's easy and fast. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to write a confession like this. But here I am, sitting in my mother's cramped living room in Bakersfield, California, staring at a laptop screen, trying to make sense of how my life fell apart. My name is Rebecca Turner, and this is the story of how I destroyed everything I had because I wanted more. It started in March 2022. I remember the date because it was my son Matthew's 13th birthday. We were celebrating at our modest two-bedroom house in the suburbs. My husband, David, Matthew, and our younger son Lucas, who was 9 at the time. The cake was from the local grocery store. Nothing fancy, but the boys were happy. David was grilling burgers in the backyard, wearing that ridiculous Kiss the Cook apron I'd bought him years ago as a joke. David Turner, my husband of 15 years, a good man, stable, reliable, predictable. He worked as a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, bringing home a decent salary that kept us comfortable but never extravagant. We had everything we needed but rarely anything we simply wanted. Our vacations were camping trips to state parks. Our date nights were dinner at chain restaurants. Our life was fine. Just fine. And then Ryan showed up. Ryan Mitchell had been David's best friend since college. They'd been inseparable back then. And when Matthew was born, it was natural that David asked Ryan to be his godfather. Ryan was charismatic, funny, and full of big dreams that never quite materialized. He talked about starting businesses, making investments, becoming wealthy, but he always seemed to be scraping by, borrowing money he never quite paid back. 8 years ago, he'd left town abruptly, claiming he had a huge opportunity out in Nevada. We never heard from him again. No calls, no emails, nothing. David was hurt by the disappearance, but eventually, he accepted that Ryan had moved on with his life. So when Ryan's black Mercedes pulled up to our house that March evening, just as we were cutting the cake, it felt like seeing a ghost. David heard the car first. He looked out the window and froze, spatula still in hand. "No way," he whispered. Then he was actually running out the front door. I followed, confused, and watched as David embraced a man I barely recognized. Ryan Mitchell had left Bakersfield as a perpetual dreamer in wrinkled shirts and faded jeans. The man standing in our driveway wore an expensive suit, designer sunglasses, and a watch that probably cost more than our car. He was tanned, fit, and radiated the kind of confidence that comes from success. His smile was brilliant white against his bronzed skin. "Dave, brother," Ryan's voice boomed across the neighborhood. "God, I've missed you." I stood on the porch, watching my husband cry as he hugged his long-lost friend. Matthew and Lucas peered out from behind me, curious about the commotion. "Where the hell have you been?" David demanded, pulling back but keeping his hands on Ryan's shoulders, as if afraid he might disappear again. I know, I've been terrible, but I'm back now, and I've got so much to tell you." Ryan's eyes found mine over David's shoulder. "Rebecca, wow, you look amazing." I felt a flutter in my stomach that I told myself was just surprise. "Ryan, this is unexpected." "Matthew." Ryan strode toward the house, arms wide. "Look at you. You're practically a man now." Matthew looked confused. He'd been 5 when Ryan left and barely remembered him, but Ryan's enthusiasm was infectious. And soon we were all inside, birthday cake forgotten, as Ryan regaled us with stories of his adventures. He'd spent the last 8 years in Nevada, he explained, working at something he called a mining complex. He was vague about the details, but the results spoke for themselves. He'd made his fortune, he said, and now he was back to invest in the community that had given him his start. "I bought a house," he announced proudly, pulling out his phone to show us photos. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion on the outskirts of town, all modern glass and steel, with a pool that looked like it belonged in a resort. "And I'm opening a business, a high-end grocery store, organic stuff, the kind of place Bakersfield needs. I'm calling it Mitchell's Market." David's eyes shone with admiration. "Man, you really did it. You always said you would, and you did." That night, after Ryan left in his Mercedes, promising to take us all out to dinner soon, David couldn't stop talking about his friend's success. "Can you believe it? Ryan really made something of himself. I'm so proud of him." I lay awake long after David fell asleep, thinking about Ryan Mitchell, about his expensive clothes, his confidence, his success, about the way he'd looked at me when he said I looked amazing, about the life he represented, a life of luxury, excitement, possibilities, the life I didn't have. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became a constant presence in our lives. He took us to expensive restaurants where the menus didn't list prices. He bought gifts for the boys' video game consoles, designer sneakers, things we could never afford. He talked about his plans for the market, his investments, his next ventures, and every time I saw him, I felt that flutter intensify into something I couldn't ignore. I started comparing David to Ryan. Where David was content, Ryan was ambitious. Where David was cautious, Ryan was bold. Where David brought home a steady paycheck, Ryan threw money around like it meant nothing. I began to resent David's satisfaction with our life, seeing it not as gratitude but as a lack of drive. Why can't you be more like Ryan? I snapped at David one evening after another modest dinner at home. He went out there and made something of himself. David looked hurt. I have made something of myself. I have a good job. I provide for this family, provide the bare minimum, I muttered, immediately regretting it but not taking it back. What's gotten into you, Becca? David asked quietly. Ever since Ryan came back, you've been different. He was right, but I couldn't admit it. I was changing, seduced by the glitter of Ryan's world, seeing my own life through a lens of dissatisfaction I'd never felt before. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late April. David was at work, the boys were at school, and I'd taken the day off from my part-time job at the insurance office. Ryan called and asked if I wanted to see the progress on the market. Just us, he said. I could use your opinion on the layout. I should have said no. I should have recognized the warning signs, the way my heart raced at his invitation, the extra care I took getting ready. But I didn't. I told myself it was innocent, that I was just helping an old friend. The market was in the final stages of construction, a sleek, modern building that looked out of place in our working-class neighborhood. Ryan gave me a tour, talking excitedly about organic produce sections, a wine bar, artisanal bread, but I could barely focus on his words. I was hyper-aware of his presence, the expensive cologne he wore, the way his hand brushed against mine as he guided me through the space. We ended up in what would become his office, a glass-walled room overlooking the main floor. Ryan poured us glasses of champagne he'd brought to christen the space. 2 new beginnings, he toasted, his eyes locked on mine. 2 new beginnings, I echoed, and drank. 1 glass became 2, became 3. We really talked about dreams and disappointments, about the lives we'd imagined versus the lives we were living. Ryan moved closer. I didn't move away. You deserve more, Rebecca, he said softly, his hand on my knee. You deserve a life that excites you. David's a good man, I said, but my voice was weak. David's a good man who's content with mediocrity, Ryan replied. But you're not. I can see it in your eyes. You want more. He was right. God help me. He was right. I did want more. I wanted the excitement I felt in that moment, the sense of possibility, the feeling of being desired by someone powerful and successful. I kissed him, or he kissed me. In the end, it doesn't matter who initiated it. What matters is that I didn't stop it. I betrayed David in that half-finished office, on a desk that still smelled of fresh paint, with a man who'd been his best friend. Afterward, I expected to feel guilty. And I did, but not as much as I expected. Mostly, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Ryan pulled me close and whispered, "This is just the beginning, beautiful. I can give you everything you've ever wanted." And foolishly, desperately, I believed him. The affair continued through the spring and into summer. Ryan gave David a job at the market assistant manager, with a salary that was twice what he'd been making at the manufacturing plant. David was thrilled, seeing it as Ryan's generosity. He had no idea that Ryan's real motive was to keep him busy and away from home. I became practiced at deception. When David worked late shifts at the market, I was with Ryan. When David thought I was grocery shopping or running errands, I was at Ryan's mansion. Ryan showered me with gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, expensive dinners. He opened a bank account for me, depositing thousands of dollars at a time. "For you," he'd say, "so you can have your own money, your own freedom." I should have asked where it all came from. I should have questioned how someone could make so much money so quickly from a market that hadn't even opened yet. But I didn't want to know. I was intoxicated by the luxury, by the feeling of being special, chosen. Ryan talked about our future together. He'd divorced David from my life. He said, "Set me up in style. We'd travel, live the high life, be free from the mundane concerns of ordinary people." I knew it was wrong. I had 2 sons, a husband who loved me, but I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself I deserved happiness, that I'd been sacrificing for years, that it was my turn. The market opened in July with great fanfare. It was everything Ryan had promised: scale, sophisticated, drawing customers from all over the region. David was proud to be part of it, working long hours to make it successful. He'd come home exhausted but happy, talking about Ryan's brilliant business instincts. If he noticed my new clothes, my jewelry, the way I'd changed my hair, he attributed it to his higher salary. "You deserve to treat yourself," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "I'm glad we can finally afford nice things." The guilt would stab me in those moments, but I'd push it down, thinking of Ryan, of the life he'd promised me. It was in late August when things started to unravel. David came home one evening looking shaken. "Something weird happened today," he said. "These guys came into the market asking for Ryan. They looked rough. One of them said to tell Ryan that Miguel wants his cut. When I asked Ryan about it later, he brushed it off, said they were construction workers he owed money to. But Becca, they didn't look like construction workers." I felt the first prickle of real fear. "What did they look like?" "Like criminals," David said flatly. "Like the kind of guys you don't want to mess with." That night, I confronted Ryan about it. We were at his house, in the ridiculous master bedroom with its king-sized bed and floor-to-ceiling windows. "Who's Miguel?" I demanded. Ryan's expression hardened. "Nobody you need to worry about. Just a business associate." "What kind of business associate?" David said. "Those men looked dangerous." "Rebecca." Ryan took my hands, his voice soothing. "I've dealt with a lot of different people in my journey to success. Some of them are rough around the edges, but everything's under control. Trust me." But I was starting not to trust him. I started paying attention to things I'd ignored before. The phone calls he'd take in another room. The way he'd disappear for days at a time with vague explanations. The tension I'd catch in his shoulders when he thought I wasn't looking. Then I heard the rumors. It started with a conversation I overheard at the market. Two women talking in hushed voices near the produce section, not realizing I was on the other side of the display. "Did you hear about Jennifer Santos's husband?" one woman said. "He disappeared last year, and now she's dating that Ryan Mitchell who owns this place." "I heard Miguel Santos was involved in some shady stuff," the other replied. "Maybe he ran off. Or maybe someone got rid of him," the first woman said darkly. "You know, Ryan made his money in Nevada, right? People say he was involved in illegal mining operations. They say he has connections to some really bad people." I stood frozen, a bag of apples in my hand, as their words sank in. Illegal mining, disappeared husband, bad people. That evening, I did something I should have done months ago. I researched Ryan Mitchell. What I found terrified me. There were news articles from Nevada about illegal mining operations run by criminal organizations, about environmental destruction, money laundering, violence. One article mentioned a complex network of operators but no names. Another talked about how these operations were fronts for laundering money from drug trafficking and other crimes. Then, I found Jennifer Santos's Facebook page. She was beautiful, younger than me, and her timeline was a chronicle of pain. Posts from a year ago, desperate pleas for information about her missing husband Miguel. Then, abruptly, the posts stopped. Her most recent photos showed her smiling, wearing expensive clothes, tagged at various locations around town. And in several of the photos, his arm around her was Ryan. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. What had I gotten myself into? What had I gotten my family into? The next morning, I checked my bank account, the one Ryan had opened for me. There was over $75,000 in it. $75,000 that I'd accepted without question. From a man who was possibly involved in criminal activities. Money that might be connected to whatever happened to Miguel Santos. I felt sick. That afternoon, David came home early, his face pale. "We need to talk," he said, and my heart stopped. "Okay," I managed. "The police came to the market today," he said. "They were asking questions about Ryan, about where his money came from, about his business dealings. Becca, they asked about us too, about whether we'd received any money from him." "What did you tell them?" I whispered. "The truth that he gave me a job, that he's been generous with the family, but I don't know anything about his finances." David looked at me intently. "They asked specifically about you, about whether you had any financial dealings with Ryan." This was it, the moment where I could have come clean, could have told David everything, and maybe salvaged something from the wreckage, but I was a coward. "No," I lied. "Why would I?" David's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That's what I told them. I said, Ryan's been a good friend, that's all." He paused. "But Becca, I'm worried. If Ryan's involved in something illegal, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, I said, my voice hollow. That night, Ryan called me, his voice urgent. Don't talk to the police without a lawyer present. About anything. Do you understand? What's going on, Ryan? What have you done? I've done what I needed to do to survive, to thrive, he said sharply. The world isn't black and white, Rebecca. Sometimes you have to operate in the gray areas. Gray areas people are saying you're involved in. Don't say anything on the phone. He cut me off. Just trust me, this will blow over. I have lawyers, connections, it'll be fine. But it wasn't fine. 2 days later, it happened. David, Ryan, and I were at a restaurant, an upscale Italian place Ryan had chosen for lunch. He'd insisted on the meeting, saying he wanted to talk about expanding the market, maybe opening a second location. I'd tried to beg off, but David had been excited, and I couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. We were halfway through our meal when I saw Ryan's expression change. He was looking past us, toward the entrance, and his face went white. We need to leave, he said abruptly, standing up. Now. But it was too late. 3 men entered the restaurant, and I recognized one of them from David's description, one of the men who'd come to the market asking for Ryan. Before anyone could react, one of them pulled out a gun. The next few seconds were chaos, screaming, people diving under tables, Ryan trying to run, then the sound of gunshots, so loud in the enclosed space that they seemed to shake the walls. Ryan fell. I don't remember much clearly after that. David pulling me down, covering me with his body, more screaming, the men fleeing, someone calling 911, and Ryan on the floor, blood spreading across his expensive white shirt, his eyes wide with shock and fear. The ambulance came, the police came. Ryan was alive but badly hurt, shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the abdomen. They rushed him to the hospital while police questioned everyone in the restaurant. I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. David held me, told the police that we were friends of the victim, that we didn't know why anyone would want to hurt him. The lies came easily now, automatic. At the hospital, as doctors worked to save Ryan's life, the real nightmare began. More police arrived, different ones, detectives who asked harder questions. They separated David and me, interviewed us in different rooms. Tell me about your relationship with Ryan Mitchell, the detective asked me. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. He's my husband's friend, I said. They've known each other for years. Just your husband's friend? Yes. She slid a photograph across the table. It was me and Ryan, coming out of his house. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. This was taken 3 weeks ago, she said. Want to revise your answer? My world tilted. We were having an affair, she finished. We've been investigating Mr. Mitchell for months, Mrs. Turner. We know about the affair. We know about the bank account he opened in your name. We know about the money he deposited, money that came from illegal mining operations in Nevada that were fronts for a drug cartel. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know where the money came from. Ignorance isn't a defense, she said coldly. You accepted $75,000 in what we believe to be drug money. That makes you complicit in money laundering. No, I stammered. I thought he was successful. I thought the money was from legitimate business. Did you think it was legitimate when you lied to your husband about it? When you hid it from everyone? She leaned forward. Mrs. Turner, Ryan Mitchell is connected to some very dangerous people. The man who shot him today is Miguel Santos's brother. Does that name mean anything to you? I felt like I was going to vomit. I heard his wife, Miguel Santos, disappeared 14 months ago. He was involved in the same illegal mining operation as Ryan Mitchell. We believe Ryan had something to do with his disappearance, possibly his murder. Miguel's brother came to collect a debt today, and when Ryan refused, he shot him. Oh God, I whispered. You're in serious trouble, Mrs. Turner, the detective said. But if you cooperate with us, tell us everything you know about Ryan Mitchell's operations, about the money, about his associates, we might be able to help you. I told them everything, every detail of the affair, the money, the conversations, the rumors I'd heard. I laid bare my betrayal, my greed, my stupidity, and with every word, I felt my life crumbling around me. When I finally left the interrogation room, I found David sitting in the hallway, his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and the expression on his face destroyed me. They told me, he said quietly, about you and Ryan, about everything. David, I don't. He stood up, and I could see he'd been crying. Just don't. I don't want to hear your excuses or your apologies. I want to know one thing. Did you ever love me? Yes, I said, tears streaming down my face. I do love you. I made a terrible mistake. A mistake. His voice rose. You had an affair with my best friend. You took drug money. You put our entire family at risk because you wanted a more exciting life. That's not a mistake, Rebecca. That's a betrayal. That's you deciding that everything we built together wasn't enough. Please, I begged. Please, we can work through this. No. His voice was firm. We can't. I don't even know who you are anymore. He walked away, leaving me alone in that sterile hospital hallway, and I knew that I'd lost him forever. The next few weeks were a legal nightmare. Ryan survived his injuries, but he was immediately arrested once he was stable enough to be discharged. The police had built a case against him for involvement in illegal mining, money laundering, and suspicion of involvement in Miguel Santos's disappearance, though they never found a body. Both David and I were investigated as potential accomplices. David was cleared relatively quickly. He could prove he'd known nothing about Ryan's illegal activities and had been a victim of deception as much as anyone. But my case was more complicated. The money in my account, the affair, my failure to report suspicious activity, all of it made me look guilty. I had to hire a lawyer, a process that drained our savings. David filed for separation and moved into an apartment, taking the boys with him on weekdays. I stayed in our house, but it felt like a tomb. Matthew and Lucas knew something was wrong but didn't know the full extent of it. David told them we were having problems but spared them the sordid details. For now, the legal process dragged on for months. I was eventually cleared of money laundering charges. The prosecutor decided there wasn't enough evidence to prove I'd known the source of the funds, but I had to forfeit all the money in the account. Every penny of it went to the state. Ryan took a plea deal in exchange for testifying against some of the higher-ups in the criminal organization he'd worked for. He received a reduced sentence of 8 years. He'd be eligible for parole in 5. As part of his testimony, he admitted that the money he'd given me was from illegal operations, that he'd used his relationship with David to gain credibility in the community, that the market was partially funded with laundered money. He also admitted to knowing what happened to Miguel Santos, though he claimed he wasn't directly involved. According to his testimony, Miguel had threatened to go to the police about the illegal operation, and other members of the organization had taken care of him. Ryan claimed he'd only learned about it after the fact, but the look in his eyes during his testimony suggested otherwise. Jennifer Santos, Miguel's widow, was also investigated. She'd accepted money from Ryan, gifts, a relationship just like me. Unlike me, she seemed to have known more about what Ryan was involved in. She was charged with accessory after the fact and conspiracy, but also took a plea deal. Through it all, the truth about my affair came out. It was in the newspapers, the local news, everywhere. In a small city like Bakersfield, everyone knew, everyone talked. David finally told Matthew and Lucas everything when the story hit the local news. He sat them down, explained that their mother had made some very bad choices, that we were getting divorced, that their lives were going to change. Matthew, 13 years old and old enough to understand, looked at me with such disappointment that I wanted to die. Why? He asked simply. Dad's a good person. Why would you do that to him? I had no answer that would satisfy him. Lucas, only 10, mostly seemed confused and sad. He cried and asked if it was his fault. Breaking his heart like that was almost worse than losing David. The divorce proceedings began in early 2023. David wanted full custody of the boys. I couldn't fight it, not with my reputation destroyed, not with the legal troubles still hanging over me, not with the way Matthew could barely look at me. We reached a settlement. David got the house, or rather, he took over the mortgage. I moved in with my mother in her cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. David got primary custody of the boys, with me getting visitation rights every other weekend and 1 evening a week. But visitation rights don't mean much when your children don't want to see you. Matthew refused to come for months. When he finally did, it was only after David insisted, and he spent the entire visit with headphones on, barely speaking to me. Lucas tried to maintain some relationship with me, but it was strained, awkward. He'd ask questions about why I did what I did, questions I couldn't answer in a way that made sense to a teen. How do you explain to your child that you threw away your family because you were seduced by money and excitement? How do you make them understand that you lost sight of what mattered? You can't. So I stopped trying to explain, and just lived with their disappointment. David, meanwhile, moved on with his life with a speed that stunned me. 6 months after our separation, I heard through the grapevine that he was seeing a woman named Sarah, who worked at the market. She was younger than me, pretty, worked as the assistant manager, the same position David had held before the market was seized as part of Ryan's criminal proceedings. At first, I was devastated. Then I was angry. Then I realized I had no right to feel either of those things. David deserved happiness. He deserved someone who wouldn't betray him. Ryan wrote to me from prison, one letter in the spring of 2023. It was 3 pages of self-justification, explaining how the world had forced him to make hard choices, how he'd done what he needed to do to survive. He claimed he'd genuinely cared about me, that our relationship had been real, not just a manipulation. I burned the letter without responding. I heard through the legal grapevine that Jennifer Santos had been in contact with Ryan, that they'd somehow rekindled their relationship despite everything. She was waiting for him to get out of prison, convinced they could start over. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The years since have been a blur of mundane misery. I work a job I hate, data entry at a medical billing company. I live in my mother's apartment, sleeping in the same bedroom I had as a teenager. My mother tries to be supportive but can't hide her disappointment. How did I raise a daughter who could do something like this? She asked once, and I had no answer. I see the boys according to the custody arrangement, but our relationship is broken. Matthew is 16 now, focused on school and friends, with little time or patience for me. He's polite when we interact, but there's a wall between us that I put there and don't know how to tear down. Lucas at 13 still tries sometimes, but even he's growing distant, pulled into David's orbit and away from mine. David married Sarah last year. They had a small ceremony that I wasn't invited to, and I only heard about it because Lucas mentioned it casually during one of our dinners. Dad and Sarah got married, he said, eating his pizza like it was nothing. She's nice. She makes really good cookies. Each word felt like a knife, but I smiled and said I was happy for them. They all live in the house now: David, Sarah, Matthew, and Lucas. Sarah moved in with her own daughter from a previous relationship, a girl named Emma, who's Lucas's age. David converted the garage into an extra bedroom to make space. I heard they're planning to add a second story to make the house bigger for their blended family. The house that was supposed to be mine and David's forever now belongs to his new family. Sometimes I drive by, late at night when I can't sleep. I park down the street and look at the lights in the windows, imagining the life going on inside. A life I could have had if I hadn't been so greedy, so foolish. I pictured David and Sarah watching TV together, the kids doing homework at the kitchen table, everyone happy and secure in a way we never quite were when I was there. Or maybe we were, and I just couldn't see it. I've been to therapy, of course, court-mandated at first, then voluntarily because I couldn't cope with the weight of what I'd done. My therapist, Dr. Anderson, is kind but direct. She's helped me understand that what I did wasn't just about Ryan or money. It was about a deep dissatisfaction with my life that I'd been ignoring for years. I'd bought into a toxic narrative that equated material success with happiness, that saw stability as boring rather than valuable. You destroyed your family chasing a fantasy, she told me once. Now you have to decide whether you're going to let that define the rest of your life, or whether you're going to build something new. But what is there to build? I'm 42 years old, living with my mother, estranged from my children, divorced from the only man who ever truly loved me. My reputation in this city is ruined. Everyone knows me as that woman who cheated with her husband's best friend, or that woman who got involved with the criminal. I think about leaving Bakersfield sometimes, starting over somewhere new. But where would I go? And how could I leave when it would mean being even further from Matthew and Lucas, losing what little connection I still have with them? So I stay, living this half-life, going through the motions. I heard recently that Ryan's up for parole next year. He'll have served 5 years, and with good behavior, he might get out. I wonder if he'll come back to Bakersfield or if he has enough sense to stay away. I wonder if Jennifer will still be waiting for him, or if she have realized that he's poison, that people like him destroy everything they touch. I think about the woman I was 3 years ago, standing in that half-finished market, kissing Ryan for the first time. I want to shake her, to scream at her about what she's about to lose. But she wouldn't have listened. She was too caught up in the excitement, the flattery, the promise of something more. That's the cruelest part, understanding that I did this to myself. Ryan was a catalyst, but I made the choices. I pursued the affair. I took the money. I lied to David. I prioritized my own desires over my family's well-being. I looked at the life I had: a loving husband, healthy children, a comfortable home, and decided it wasn't enough. Now I have nothing, and I understand exactly how much I lost. Matthew graduated from high school last month. I wasn't invited to the ceremony, but Lucas sent me a photo of Matthew in his cap and gown, smiling, with David and Sarah on either side of him, looking proud. Emma was there too, all of them looking like a real family. I cried when I saw that photo, sitting alone in my mother's apartment, mourning everything I gave up. There's a saying about not knowing what you have until it's gone. It's trite, but true. I had a husband who loved me faithfully for 15 years. I had 2 beautiful boys who looked up to me. I had a home, a family, a life that was good, not perfect, not glamorous, but solid and real, and full of love. I threw it all away for a man who was never going to leave his criminal life behind, for money that was stained with other people's misery, for a fantasy of excitement that was always going to end in disaster. The thing about betrayal is that you can never take it back. You can apologize, you can grow, you can change, but you can never undo it. David will never be able to forget that I cheated on him with his best friend. Matthew and Lucas will always know that their mother chose personal gratification over their family. That knowledge is a scar that never fully heals. I write this not because I expect sympathy or forgiveness. I don't deserve either. I write it because I need to tell the truth, to lay bare exactly how devastating the consequences of my choices have been. If there's any purpose to this confession, it's as a warning to anyone who looks at their life and feels that itch of dissatisfaction, who compares their partner to someone flashier or wealthier or more exciting, who thinks I deserve more. Please, listen to what I'm telling you. You probably already have enough. You probably already have everything that matters. The person who loves you, who's faithful and kind and present, who shows up day after day, that person is worth more than all the luxury and excitement in the world. Don't let someone with money and charisma convince you otherwise. Don't trade substance for flash. I did, and it cost me everything. David is happy now, or at least he seems to be. He has a wife who appreciates him, a blended family that's growing together, plans for the future. He rebuilt his life from the ruins I created, and he did it without me. My boys are growing up with a stepmother who bakes them cookies and helps with homework, who didn't betray their father, who's building a stable home for them. That should make me happy. They deserve that stability, but it hurts knowing that someone else is giving them what I should have provided. As for me, I'm stuck in my mother's apartment, stuck in a city where everyone knows my shame, stuck in a life that feels like punishment, and it is punishment, self-inflicted, deserved punishment. I don't expect the pain to ever fully go away. I don't expect Matthew to ever look at me with anything other than disappointment, or Lucas to stop being uncomfortable around me. I don't expect David to ever forgive me, and I've stopped expecting to forgive myself. This is my life now. This is what I chose when I chose Ryan. The other day, I was at the grocery store, not Mitchell's Market, which was sold at auction and renamed years ago, but a regular chain store. I saw a couple in the produce section, laughing. Subscribe to the channel. It's easy and fast.